What if I told you that a single cyber heist just netted a cool $1.4 billion in Ethereum? Yeah, you heard that right. Buckle up, because this week's deep dive is going straight into the heart of some seriously intense cybersecurity news. We've got North Korean hackers, massive data breaches, and even a vulnerability that could hit you right where you live.
It's a wild week for sure, and it really shows how diverse the threats are out there, from nation-state actors to, everyday vulnerabilities.
First up, the Lazarus Group. $1.4 billion in Ethereum. Gone.
The biggest crypto heist in history, yeah.
Blockchain analysts have been all over this, right?
Oh, yeah. Zach XBT especially, he's been tracking the stolen funds, and it's pretty clear it's the Lazarus Group, the wallet addresses, the connections to their previous hacks, Femex, BingX, Poloniex. It all lines up.
North Korea.
Yeah.
Well, I've got quite the track record of this kind of thing.
It's not their first rodeo, that's for sure. The UN says they pulled off at least, 58 crypto heists in 2024 alone, over $650 million.
So what does a haul like this even mean? For the crypto market, for North Korea, for, the world?
Well, this heist is off the charts, size-wise. It raises a lot of questions. It shows how vulnerable these platforms can be, even the ones that seem really secure. And then there's the question of what North Korea will do with the money.
Yeah, where does $1.4 billion in stolen crypto even go? It's like something out of a spy movie.
Well, there are reports that a big chunk of their economy is funded by cybercrime now.
Okay, so from $1 billion heist, let's shift gears to a data breach that hit a lot closer to home. DISA Global Solutions. They do background checks, drug testing, that kind of thing, right?
Right, and they work with a huge number of Fortune 500 companies.
And they just had a breach affecting, wait for it, 3.3 million people.
Yeah, a massive breach.
So we're talking social security numbers, driver's licenses, financial details, maybe even medical records, all out in the open.
Potentially, yeah. It's a huge mess.
Any idea how it happened?
Still pretty murky. There are whispers that they paid a ransom, but nothing confirmed. And even if they did, there's no guarantee the hackers will actually delete the data.
So paying the ransom might not even fix the problem.
Yeah.
Talk about a tough spot to be in.
It really highlights the kind of impossible choices companies face in these situations, right? Pay up and potentially fuel more attacks, or refuse and risk the data getting out there.
Speaking of tough spots, Apple made a pretty controversial move this week by removing its advanced data protection feature in the UK.
Yeah, that caught my eye too. I mean, that feature gave you end-to-end encryption for iCloud backups. Even Apple couldn't access the data. It was a huge win for privacy.
So why backpedal on that?
Well, the UK government has been pushing hard for access to encrypted data, citing national security and all that. They've got that Investigatory Powers Act,
But doesn't weakening encryption, doesn't that open the door for cybercriminals to exploit those vulnerabilities?
Absolutely. It's the classic security versus privacy debate, and it's not going away anytime soon.
Now, for a story that really shook up the cybersecurity world, Skybox Security. They had funding, they had promising tech, and then boom, they're gone.
Yeah, over $300 million in funding. Poof. Shut down, laid off everyone. It really shows you how volatile this market can be.
What happens to their tech now? And the employees?
Well, Tufin, the Israeli cybersecurity firm, snatched up their assets. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it. As for the employees, well, they're out there looking for work now.
Tough break. All right, let's talk about Signal. We're seeing a surge in attacks targeting Signal accounts, and it seems like Russia-aligned hackers are behind it.
Right. Signal's known for its tight encryption, but even they have weaknesses.
So how are they getting in?
They're exploiting the linked devices feature, the one that uses QR codes for easy setup.
So malicious QR codes.
Exactly. They trick users into scanning them, and boom, their Signal account is linked to a device the attackers control. They can see messages in real time, all without having to actually hack the user's device.
And who are they targeting?
High-value targets, mainly. Military, politicians, journalists, activists, anyone whose communications might be useful to Russian intelligence. They even use military-themed phishing scams and fake group invites to lure people in.
Espionage, data theft, maybe even trying to manipulate public opinion. Scary stuff.
Yeah, it's a serious threat.
Let's take a break from the global cyber battles for a second and focus on a more local story. Williamsburg, James City County Public Schools in Virginia. They got hit with a cyber attack recently.
Yeah, a classic case of how these attacks can disrupt everyday life. They knocked out the school's network, so no access to systems, no virtual learning, and wouldn't you know it, it happened during a snowstorm.
So kids stuck at home, no school, no online learning, What a mess did they manage to recover?
Their tech team and some cybersecurity experts got the systems back online pretty quickly. Law enforcement's investigating, and they're offering free credit monitoring to students and staff just in case.
Good to hear they're taking it seriously. Now for some good news. SailPoint, the identity security firm, just had a very successful IPO.
Yeah, they're valued at $12.8 billion now. That's a big vote of confidence in the cybersecurity sector.
That seems like AI-driven cybersecurity is really gaining momentum.
It is. Look at Dream, the AI-focused cybersecurity firm Sebastian Kurz co-founded. They just hit a $1 billion valuation, too.
And they're focusing on protecting governments and critical infrastructure.
That's right. It shows you where the investment is going.
Speaking of investment, Palo Alto Networks just raised their revenue forecast because of the demand for their AI-driven security tools.
Yeah, companies are realizing that traditional security just isn't enough anymore.
So they're finally waking up to the fact that cybersecurity is a must-have, not a nice-to-have.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about something that seems straight out of science fiction. Quantum computing. It's becoming a reality, and it's got some people worried, especially in the cybersecurity world.
Rightfully so. Quantum computers could potentially break the encryption we rely on today.
So online banking, communications, government secrets, all vulnerable.
Potentially, yes.
So what are we doing about it?
There's a lot of research and development going on in post-quantum cryptography, or PQC. It's all about creating encryption that can withstand attacks from both classical and quantum computers.
So a race against time.
You could say that. Microsoft just unveiled their Majorana 1 quantum chip. 1 million qubits. It's a big step.
And didn't Google's VP of Security, Phil Venables, say we have like 7 years to get PQC up and running?
Something like that, yeah. It's a tight timeline.
Before we wrap up this first part, I want to talk about a vulnerability that's surprisingly common and really concerning. It was discovered by a security researcher named Eric Deigel. He found a flaw in the MESH by Viscount Access Control System, the ones they use in a lot of apartment buildings.
Yeah, I read about that. A pretty basic vulnerability, really. Unchanged default login credentials.
So they were using the factory set usernames and passwords.
Yep. Basically leaving the door wide open.
And this guy was able to access resident data, override access controls, all because they didn't change the default password.
That's the scary part. And he found 89 vulnerable buildings just by using basic security scanning tools. He even notified the vendor, but they didn't do anything about it.
Unbelievable. It's a reminder that cybersecurity is not just about protecting data. It's about protecting people's safety and privacy in their own homes.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It really is amazing how fast things change in cybersecurity.
It's true. 1 minute it's a $1 billion heist. The next it's your apartment building security system. It can be tough to keep up.
That's where resources like CybersecurityHQ come in. You need a good source for news and analysis, to help make sense of it all.
Absolutely. Okay, so before we got sidetracked, we were talking about quantum computing and how it could break the encryption we use every day. It's a pretty big deal.
It is, but it's not all doom and gloom. Quantum computing has a lot of potential, not just for breaking encryption, but for all sorts of fields like medicine and materials, science.
So it's not just a ticking time bomb.
No, not at all. In fact, quantum computing could help us make even better cybersecurity solutions, ones that are more secure than anything we have today.
That's good to hear. But it still seems like we're in a race against time to figure this out before quantum computers get too powerful.
There is a sense of urgency, that's for sure. But I'm optimistic. There's a lot of research happening in post-quantum cryptography, PQC for short, and governments, industry, and academics are all working together.
So we're not just waiting for the quantum apocalypse.
Definitely not. There are already some very promising PQC algorithms being developed and tested. NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, is working on setting standards for them.
Okay, so that's good news. But let's say quantum computers do become a reality. What can people and companies do to prepare for this quantum era?
The most important thing is to stay informed, keep up with what's happening with PQC, and understand the potential risks.
So no sticking our heads in the sand.
No way. But don't panic either. We have time, and there are steps we can take now to be ready.
Like what? What kind of practical steps?
Well, for starters, the basics are always important. Strong passwords and two-factor authentication everywhere you can.
That's good advice no matter what, right?
Exactly. But it's even more important as computers get more powerful and start thinking about how you can switch to PQC algorithms in the future.
So this is something companies and IT departments need to be thinking about now.
Yes, it's not something you can do overnight. You need a plan, you need to test things out, and then you need to implement it all carefully.
Seems like a lot of work.
Yeah.
But speaking of work, earlier we were talking about Skybox Security and how they suddenly shut down. It was a pretty surprising story.
It was, and it raises some interesting questions about the cybersecurity market. Even companies with a lot of money and good technology can struggle.
What do you think happened? Was it just the market, or were there other things going on?
It's hard to say for sure without knowing all the details, but maybe they grew too fast or their technology wasn't as good as they thought it was.
So it's a cautionary tale for other cybersecurity startups.
I think so. It shows that even in a hot market like cybersecurity, you need a good plan, a strong team, and a product that people really need.
It's a tough business.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about something more positive. SailPoint's IPO was a big success. That's got to be good news for the cybersecurity industry, right?
Definitely. Investors are clearly confident in the industry's growth, and SailPoint's focus on identity security is really important.
Why is identity security such a big deal these days?
Well, think about it. With all the remote work and cloud computing happening, our digital identities are spread out all over the place. We have accounts on so many platforms and devices, and it's hard to keep track of it all, let alone secure it.
So it's like having a giant keychain with keys to a million different doors. You have to keep track of them all and make sure nobody steals them.
Perfect analogy. And that's where identity security solutions come in. They help organizations manage and secure access to their systems and data by verifying who's who.
So it's not just about protecting companies. Individuals need to be careful too, right?
Absolutely. You need to be careful about what you share online, the accounts you create, and the passwords you use.
Be smart, be proactive. Speaking of being proactive, we talked about the DISA Global Solutions data breach earlier. It's a reminder that any company can be vulnerable, no matter how big or well-established.
And it shows how important it is to have a plan for when things go wrong, an incident response plan.
What does a good incident response plan look like?
First, you need to understand what you're protecting, your data, where it's stored, who have access. Then you need procedures for detecting, containing, and responding to security incidents.
So it's not just about reacting after an attack.
No, a good plan is proactive. It's about anticipating threats, implementing security controls, and training your employees to spot and report anything suspicious.
So it's a whole company approach, right? People, processes, technology, all working together.
Exactly. And it's crucial for any organization that wants to minimize the damage from a cyber attack.
It sounds like a lot of work, but it's got to be worth it.
It is, absolutely. Data breaches can cost a company a fortune, both in money and in reputation. It's much better to prevent an attack than to clean up afterwards.
Well said. Okay, let's talk more about AI and cybersecurity. We've touched on it a few times, but it seems like AI is both a solution and a potential problem.
You hit the nail on the head. AI is a powerful tool, and it can be used for good or for bad. It all depends on who's using it and what they're trying to do.
Like any technology, right? A knife can be used to cook or to hurt someone.
Exactly. And that's why we need to be thinking about the ethical implications of AI and how we can regulate it. We need to make sure AI is being developed and used responsibly.
But AI is changing so fast. How can we keep up and make sure it's being used ethically?
It's a huge challenge, no doubt about it, but it's a challenge we have to face. We need to be talking openly and honestly about the risks and benefits of AI, and we need to work together to create guidelines and frameworks that encourage responsible AI development.
It sounds like a long and complicated process.
It is, but it's essential. The future of cybersecurity, maybe even the future of humanity, depends on whether we can use AI for good while preventing its potential harms.
That's a powerful statement. Okay, before we wrap up this part of the deep dive, I want to talk about something we mentioned earlier, the growing threat of nation-state actors in cyberspace. We've talked about North Korea and Russia, but are there other countries involved in this?
Oh, absolutely. Cyber warfare is a major part of conflict now, and many countries are developing and using cyber weapons. China, Iran, even some Western countries are known to be active.
It's like a digital Wild West out there.
In some ways, yeah. There are no clear rules in cyberspace, and it's often hard to tell where espionage ends and sabotage or attack begins.
So it's a dangerous and unpredictable landscape.
It can be. And it's important to remember that cyber attacks can have real-world consequences. They can disrupt critical infrastructure, steal sensitive information, even influence elections.
So this is not some abstract threat we can just ignore.
Not at all. Cyber warfare is a real danger, and we need to be ready to defend ourselves.
It's a sobering thought. And it reminds us that cybersecurity is not just about technology. It's about geopolitics, too.
Exactly. And it's something we all need to be aware of and concerned about.
Well, that's all the time we have for this part of the deep dive. But don't worry, we'll be back with more fascinating and thought-provoking cybersecurity stories after a short break.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we're getting into some pretty heady stuff. Cyber warfare, nation-state actors. It's a whole different level of cybersecurity.
It is. We tend to focus on individual hackers or criminal gangs, but governments are big players in this space, and their actions can have some serious consequences.
So what are they after? Is it all about espionage, or are there other motives at play?
Espionage is a big part of it, sure. Countries want to steal secrets, military tech, economic data, political intel, but it goes beyond that. Disrupting infrastructure, spreading propaganda, meddling in elections, even just causing chaos and instability. Cyberattacks can do a lot of damage.
It's like a whole new type of warfare, fought with code instead of bullets. Exactly. And it's often hard to figure out who's behind it, which makes it really hard to deter. It's a lot easier to hide in cyberspace.
So what can we do? Are there any rules, any agreements to try and control this digital Wild West?
There have been some attempts to create international norms, to encourage responsible behavior in cyberspace. But it's a slow process. It's hard to get everyone to agree on what's acceptable, and enforcement is a whole other problem.
Sounds like we're still figuring things out as we go. But let's bring it back down to earth for a minute. That story about the MESH by Viscount Access Control System, the one used in apartment buildings, really stuck with me. It shows how cybersecurity isn't just an IT problem. It's a physical security issue, too.
Absolutely. It comes down to security by design. Too often, security is just tacked on at the end as an afterthought.
So you're saying manufacturers need to build security into their products right from the start?
Exactly. Security should be built into the DNA of the product, especially for things that control access to physical spaces or sensitive information.
But that doesn't always happen, does it? Like that MESH system. It seems like a basic security product.
Right.
Why wouldn't they make security a priority?
Well, sometimes it's about money. Adding security features can make a product more expensive, and some companies might not want to do that if it means their product is less competitive.
So balancing security and affordability.
Sometimes, yeah, but it's also a lack of awareness. Some companies might not realize how serious the risks are, or they underestimate how sophisticated hackers can be.
So we need to educate them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to get the message out there that security by design is crucial. It's not just a tech issue, it's a business issue. Security breaches hurt a company's reputation, lead to lawsuits, make customers lose trust.
Nobody wants to be known for having insecure products.
Right, and customers are getting smarter about security too. They're starting to demand products that are secure by design.
So maybe that'll push companies in the right direction. But let's get back to AI in cybersecurity. It seems like AI is both a good guy and a bad guy in this story.
That's a perfect way to put it. AI is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
Like a knife. You can cook with it or you can hurt someone.
Exactly. And that's why we need to be thinking about ethics and regulations for AI. We need to make sure it's developed and used responsibly.
But how do we do that when AI is changing so fast? How do we keep up and make sure it's used ethically?
It's a huge challenge, but we have to try. We need to have open and honest conversations about the potential risks and benefits of AI. And we need to work together to come up with guidelines and frameworks that promote responsible AI development.
Sounds like an ongoing process.
It is, but it's crucial. The future of cybersecurity, maybe even the future of humanity, depends on whether we can use AI's power for good while controlling its potential dangers.
That's a lot to think about. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. It's been a wild ride, with everything from billion-dollar heists to quantum computing to the security of our own homes.
It has been, and it just shows how important cybersecurity is in our world today.
Absolutely, and that's why CybersecurityHQ is here. We're your source for all things cybersecurity, from news and analysis to jobs and training resources.
And don't forget our weekly newsletter. Over 70,000 cybersecurity professionals rely on it to stay up to date.
So check us out and stay safe out there. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.